Hi, everybody. This is Pastor Chris Short, pastor of Siloam Baptist Church. I'm coming to you from a little bit of a different setting at this moment. It is at home. I'm recording this on the evening before our morning service. I am doing so because what we have chosen to do, utilizing our YouTube and our Facebook, is to offer what I'm referring to as these Cliff Note versions of the sermon that will be preached during the upcoming day generally. By doing that, because of some of the restrictions Facebook has brought upon us and some of the difficulties in using their particular system to edit videos. But I would like to continue to use this format to give you a feel of what the sermon is going to be like, really the heart of the sermon. And in this particular message that I'll be delivering, it comes from the book of Joshua, just one verse, Joshua 24:15, a very familiar verse in the Bible. Let me read that to you from the New King James Version. And if it seem evil to you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Now let me give you a little framework of what's going on here. These are many years past the death of Moses. Moses was used by God as the deliverer. We can see, as we look at the totality of Scripture, that God intended not only for Moses to be an actual physical deliverer of the people of God out of bondage in Egypt, but also as a prototype, a precursor to what Jesus himself would do and do perfectly for all of those whom he would redeem on behalf of the Father. Moses was sent into Egypt, and he declared that God had intended for these people to be released by Pharaoh, and Pharaoh wouldn't do it. And through a course and a series over some time of various plagues, 10 plagues in particular, Pharaoh finally relented. And in relenting, he only did God's will because it was God's will for those people to exit Egypt and to go into the promised land as promised to them in times past. Over time, as they were led out of Egypt, across the desert, through the Red Sea, amazingly and miraculously saved, they rebelled. And in that rebellion, God punished them and disciplined them by allowing an entire generation to pass away before those people, that people group, were allowed to go into the promised land. Moses himself was not allowed, because of his own disobedience, to actually physically lead the people into the promised land. So he, prior to his death, passed that mantle of leadership on to his understudy, Joshua. And Joshua, at this point, as we come to this particular verse in chapter 24 of the book of Joshua, Joshua is now at the end of his life. And he is bringing to the forefront before the people of God that they have daily choices to make. Whether they would choose to worship and follow God, the God who had brought them out of bondage, out of Egypt, through the Red Sea, across the desert, and ultimately sustained them, even through their disobedience and the punishment of that disobedience, into the promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Now, Joshua had come to the end of his life, and he brings to this these people, this declaration of faith. It was a declaration of faith for himself. It was very personal to Joshua as he was declaring this. Even though he was at the end of his life, he was not only affirming the importance of moving forward in faith, but he was affirming the value of living in faith to God over the years that he served as God's spokesman and leader to the people. So let me give you these Cliff Note thoughts here, the main structure of the sermon that I'll be preaching. I encourage you to come and be a part of our service in person. One Bible scholar says this. He says, Joshua stands at the end of his leadership reminding Israel that faith cannot be inherited, outsourced, or postponed. It must be chosen. His words are not merely a farewell speech. They are a household confession meant to shape daily life. In one sentence, Joshua gives families a model for faith that is intentional, visible, and enduring. What Joshua tells us in this particular verse, this singular verse that holds such meaning and truth and is so fond of many believers, is a few things. First one is this, that your faith, that my faith, that real, genuine, saving faith must be chosen daily. It says in those words, choose you this day whom you will serve. It's not just in the days of Moses, nor in the days of Joshua, nor in the days of the disciples, nor in the days of the first century Christians, or all the Christians that have lived over the centuries, for them to choose daily to live by faith, but it behooves us to live by faith as well. And Joshua makes it clear that there's no neutral option when it comes to obeying God. Every choice you make is a declaration towards the one that you serve, and therefore the denial of those who you hold inferior to that primary one that you serve. Faith doesn't drift naturally towards growth. It often has to be fed and fostered, and God uses both good and difficult situations to strengthen our faith, to sharpen our faith, to focus our faith, and to build our faith. And Joshua had a legacy, just like Moses had a legacy, of living by faith through adversity. And through that adversity, they not only showed their obedience, but they grew in their faith. Every day, you're going to find competing voices for your focus and your worship. Choose wisely. So not only does faith require us to choose it daily, but faith has to be lived out publicly, not just privately. Because he says, choose you this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, this is what Joshua says. He speaks first as an individual household leader, but he also does so as a model of not just what was going on privately in his own household, but what was to be going on privately in the households of all those who are calling themselves people of God. He did two things. He modeled it in his life, and he declared it to be the responsibility and the behavior of God's people. And that is true for you today, that you must not only live your faith out privately, but that private living out of your faith moves out of the home into the culture. Although the home is the primary place at times where faith is formed and developed, it is not the place where it stays. Serving the Lord is a part of the daily rhythm of your life. We show our faith and service by our prayers, by our acts of forgiveness, by following Scripture, by worshiping the Lord and loving one another. The third thing that comes out of this passage, after we talked about faith must be exercised and chosen daily, that your faith must be developed and fostered privately but lived out publicly. The third thing in this passage that I would say that you can take away is that your faith must be directed towards serving the Lord himself. Because the passage says, choose you this day whom you will serve, the personal choice. As for me and my house, it is personal, but it impacts others. He says in the final part of that, we will collectively, the people in my household, I will lead them to serve the Lord. Serving requires submission. Serving requires dedication. Serving requires perseverance, because oftentimes you serve in areas and places that you feel ill-equipped. You also serve in opportune situations where you don't feel adequate. You may also feel at times it's not something that you should do. It's someone else's responsibility, but God strategically puts you there. And when it comes to faith development, it is the responsibility of the father and the parents to transfer their belief system into the hearts and minds of their children. They can't give them their faith, but they live it out in such a way that your children have a very difficult time denying that you believe what you tell them, that you are doing so by living it out, not just in word, but in action. And that action carries forth in how you lead your family to serve the Lord. It is not a vague statement of superficial spirituality, but it is a declaration of committed service. To serve the Lord means taking your ordinary life and behaviors and your opportunities in your day and living them out, not for your personal comfort, but for the glory of God. Serving God shapes how you spend your time, use your resources, and how you treat others. This is how we go from living it out privately and developing it privately, but to living it out and exercising it publicly. You not only commit yourself individually, but you as leaders of your household and those that you have influence over, that you lead them to serve the Lord publicly. And that is critical for the world to see believers of God worshiping God as He intends and declares them to do so. He truly becomes the centerpiece of our lives, not just in word, but word and deed. A serving faith, according to one commentator, is a sustaining faith. Your faith will not grow stronger. It will not be sustained. It will not endure if you don't exercise it through serving the Lord, the one that you declare to love. So Joshua's statement is a declaration. It is also a daily vow. In a world where we find loyalties easily swayed one way or the other, those who follow Christ need to have their eyes fixed on the Lord. And this is what Joshua is saying as he comes to the end of his life. Although he would say that he did not live a perfect life, he lived a life by faith. Faith in the God that had led them out of Egypt and ultimately into the presence of the Lord. Choose your faith wisely. Choose your service wisely. And allow it to be sustained through those serving opportunities. May God bless you and keep you. May these words from Joshua be an encouragement to you, as well as something to think deeply about, and most importantly, encourage you to live them out in your walk for Christ. Never discount the blessing nor the impact that you can have on those that you deal with daily, and even those that you deal with in public. God will use all that which is true and faithful to Him, to His glory, and for the good of those who are called according to His purpose and that love Him. I pray that you love Him and that you are called according to His purpose. May God bless you as you have listened to this. Thank you for giving us your time. We look forward to sharing some more of these Cliff Notes down the road. If you ever need us, please contact us at Siloam Baptist Church. You can call us or you can email us, and we'll be happy to reach back out to you. Thank you and have a great rest of the day.